This is CBC Late Night News.
Good evening, I'm Marivelle Tarouk. It was a Game 4 that felt like a Game 7. You may have questioned, even doubted, could the Toronto Raptors come back to life against the Philadelphia 76ers? Kelda Yuen spent the game with fans asking that very question.
Let's go Raptors!
It's a beautiful day here in Jurassic Park. I'm surrounded by thousands of Raptors fans cheering on the team, hoping that they could tie this series after a blowout loss to Philadelphia in Game 3. Fans here are a little bit nervous, but very confident.
I still have faith, though. I do.
They could do better, but I'm confident they'll bring it up.
Demi Watson and her family were among those with their eyes glued on the big screen. The Raptors and Sixers exchanged leads through the first half, making it tough to watch at times.
Season facilitating here, Siakam.
They just gotta hit their shots.
Some fouls they didn't call, which is like, that's rude.
They have to win this game. If they don't win this game, it's over.
Not over, but it would be a tough road back. Only 11 teams in NBA history have overcome 3-1 deficits to win a series. Fortunately for fans, it didn't have to come to that. With just over a minute to go, the Raptors were clinging to a 91-90 lead when a crucial three-pointer from Kawhi Leonard pulled the team 4 points ahead.
It's been awesome to watch Kawhi. It's literally an honor.
Raptors were able to cling to the lead, taking Game 4 101-96 and tying the series at 2 apiece.
Watching it as tense for a bit, the Raptors came through. Kawhi Leonard carried us on our back as usual.
For longtime fan Andy Nam, it's also been a long day. He ran the Toronto Marathon this morning.
It's a good day today. Lucky that we win, and hopefully we're going to win the next 2 games.
We get to party tonight for this win. Woo!
So lots of relief tonight, fans. They get to go home celebrating. Game 5 will be back at home on Tuesday night. Kelda Yuen, CBC News, Toronto.
We have the best fans. Well, some residents in Toronto's Rosedale neighborhood caught a glimpse of an unexpected sight soaring above their streets. A skydiver apparently parachuting in the middle of the neighborhood. Police say they were called to the area yesterday afternoon for reports of a skydiver who appeared to be in distress. They didn't find anyone, but this video surfaced shortly after on Twitter. The poster said she spotted 2 skydivers, but only caught one on camera. Toronto police are cautioning this is a bad idea regardless of your skill level. Well, with the sunshine today, hope reigns for the 10,000 people in Ottawa and Quebec forced out of their homes because of spring floods. Water levels are receding, but as Crystalie Ramlakan explains from Cumberland, the hardest tasks for residents are yet to come.
The water levels are dropping, but it's not over for residents here. It could be weeks before all of this water goes away and the recovery process can start.
It's a nightmare for everybody involved. It's debilitating and it's extreme suffering. I mean, to have to, it's suffering financially, it's suffering emotionally, it's suffering mentally. Our bodies are aching. From places we didn't even know that could ache.
Rain is in the forecast for next week, and if there's enough, water levels could rise again. So the city is asking people to keep sandbags around homes for now.
We're just kind of in a holding pattern, so we're here keeping support for the residents to address any issues they may have and answer some questions.
Remy Delorme is feeling some relief. After a week and a half, he can finally drive his truck up to his house.
Now it's going down and starting the time to do some cleanup around the house, disinfect the sandbox and everything. I'm planning to do a retaining wall in front of my house for the. You never know in the nearest future. It could happen again in 2 years. It could happen again in 20 years. You never know.
Fire officials handed out battery-operated smoke and carbon monoxide detectors because power has been shut off at some places. The city says turning power back on should be left to professionals. Each home has to be assessed before being reconnected. Glenn McMahon is grateful for all the work that's gone into protecting his home, but now he's thinking of cleanup.
I work for a living, and it's not going to be much fun, but it is a bunch of free sand.
If homeowners need financial help, they can register with the Red Cross. On the other side of the city, one community support center remains open in Constance Bay. It won't be open 24 hours a day anymore. It's going to be open from 10 to 7 starting tomorrow. And even though staff won't be there overnight, people can still access the building for things like showers and electrical outlets by contacting security there. Crystalie Ramlacan, CBC News, Ottawa.
So the good news, it looks like, Sophia, that the sun was shining and it was that warm, clear day that you were calling for.
Yeah, it's nice to see some of the cleanup effort beginning, but unfortunately, late week, the long-range forecast does have more rain on the way for some of the flood-stricken areas. Until then, though, we will have a bit of drying out, but let's focus in on this for a second, because for those of you in Ottawa and Quebec and Ontario's cottage country, we are talking a washout of a day Thursday, even into a bit of Friday. And water levels are one thing, but doesn't take it into account the really gusty winds that will be coming with this system as well, that will add to soil erosion, damage to property and sandbags, and of course the extra wave heights. We're watching that really closely, especially as we head to midweek for the water levels that are still on the rise around Lake Ontario for those of you in Toronto Island. We'll give you a quick short-range forecast, and we'll talk a little bit more about the flooding afterwards as well. Balmy conditions, maybe even some 20s around the Golden Horseshoe for Monday. Before the rain moves in, it'll be light into the afternoon. It'll start to get a bit heavy with some bigger showers throughout the evening commute. Downpours possible into the overnight, and could be a little bit messy still for your Tuesday morning commute. Not a ton of rain. 10 to 15 millimeters, but enough to rub some salt in the wounds. And then a colder pattern really is ushered in behind. Temperatures decrease by about 5 degrees Tuesday, and even more for Wednesday. We'll talk a little bit more about the cool down and that long range big spring storm when we return.
Okay, we'll see you in a bit. Thanks, Sophia.
Sounds good.
Well, a great day to enjoy the sun and warmth, both on land and on the water. Paddlers embraced an opportunity to canoe down the Don River. Hundreds came out to the Manulife Paddle the Don. As CBC's Talia Ricci reports, on this sunny spring day, some people recalled a darker time for the Don.
The year was 1969, and the somber occasion was a funeral for the Don River. 50 years later, the man whose station wagon was used as a hearse that day says much has changed.
I think the important thing here as well is the quality of the Don has really improved. People's awareness of the environment is much higher than it certainly was 50 years ago. So I'm very glad to have been part of that movement.
In its 26th year, the annual event drew hundreds of paddlers and spectators.
Passionate about the rivers and the city and green spaces in the city, and appreciating them and taking advantage of beautiful things right in our backyards.
And taking care of our backyard too. Paddle the Don raises funds for Toronto and Region Conservation Authority.
We are responsible for the management of the watersheds in the Toronto region, so we do need those funds to help us design better programs, to get people more interested in nature.
Now this is a day that hundreds of paddlers look forward to, because where you see them launching right here, usually the water would be too shallow, but for this event they actually open up a dam so that the water levels are high enough.
Being able to paddle it for this one day and for a good cause to help the environment and to support groups that take care of our environment here in Toronto, it's a fabulous opportunity. We're part of the U of T trash team. We're going to help their efforts and pick up some trash in the water.
The TRCA's annual report card for the Don River watershed steadily improves, but the river still faces challenges like stormwater runoff and invasive species. The goal is to get it back to pristine conditions.
Our objective, obviously, is to get it back to that place as quickly as we can, and that's not going to happen overnight, but huge progress has been made over the last 50 years.
As the river continues to be nursed back to health for future paddlers to enjoy.
And I'm super excited. We brought snacks and we got those rapids, so I'm ready for it.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
2018 was the deadliest year on record in Windsor, and with an assault just this morning, a stabbing earlier this week, 2 incidents of gunfire in April, the crime rate remains a concern for many, including those who live and work on the streets. When busker Andrew Nellis moved to Windsor 5 years ago, he remembers a warm, smiling city. But now he says it's different.
It's become a mean city. I know for myself, when I'm out here doing tarot readings, I occasionally got comments from, religious folk passing, but it's become much more common. Now, usually at least 2 or 3 times a day when I'm out here, I'll have someone come by and tell me that what I do is nonsense. I actually had one person a few days ago threaten to kick over my table. But beyond that, we're also seeing the rise of gun violence and knife violence here in Windsor. And again, this is not something that was traditional to Windsor. Even 4 or 5 years ago when I first arrived, the downtown could be a little rough, but it was fistfights, not gunfights. You don't feel as safe as you used to. It's especially hard for someone who's working on the street where we rely on each other to keep ourselves safe. Well, what you notice is that people that you used to see every day or once a week just don't appear anymore. You see a few people, but the faces you do see are new, and they're generally people who are traveling through. You don't see the regulars anymore.
In Toronto, more than 300 cats were found in an apartment yesterday. Toronto Cat Rescue and Toronto Animal Services say they removed the cats from a, quote, hoarding situation. The maximum number of cats allowed in a home in the city is 6. This is the second large cat rescue in recent months. On March 30th, 100 cats were rescued from an Etobicoke home. At Queen's Park, a memorial honoring the province's fallen police officers was held today.
I found it very moving. I didn't realize how many people had given their lives for us.
This is a good remembrance to hear their names and a reminder that it's a very, dangerous job, and we certainly respect all they do for us.
All 266 names were read out loud at this year's Ceremony of Remembrance. Afterwards, officers from around the province gathered and marched to the steps of the legislature. The annual event is in its 20th year. And that is a live look at Toronto's skyline. The CN Tower lit up in blue, also honoring those men and women in Ontario who lost their lives in the line of duty. 78 people are believed to have boarded this plane in Moscow. 41 would perish. Their story after the break. Officials in Russia say 41 people are dead after a plane crashed at a Moscow airport. It had just taken off when crew declared an emergency. The CBC's Chris Brown reports.
Its entire tail section ablaze, and the rear landing gear apparently collapsed. Aeroflot flight SU-1492 tore down the runway in a fireball. From inside, terrifying footage that captured the panic and screams of those who could feel the fire and heat closing in on them, frantic to get out. When the plane finally came to a stop, passengers jumped for their lives down escape chutes. Some, it appeared, even managed to grab their carry-on luggage. The first report suggested everyone got out safely, but given the ferocity of the fire, that was too much to hope for. Security camera footage on Russian TV showed the Sukhoi 100 Superjet coming in fast and hitting the runway hard. It bounced into the air, and the fire started after the plane's tail struck the ground. Tracking data shows the pilot reported an escalating series of problems. 8 minutes in, the crew said the radio wasn't operational. Then, after 22 minutes, they declared a full-blown emergency before finally landing back at Sheremetyevo 26 minutes after takeoff. Russian state media have not reported an official cause of the crash, and there are dueling narratives that the problems may have started with a lightning strike or an unrelated electrical malfunction. In Soviet times, Aeroflot was one of the most notorious airlines in the world. But in the decades since, its safety record has been exemplary. The Superjet is one of the very few Russian-built aircraft Aeroflot flies, but it's had a troubled history. In 2012, one Superjet slammed into an Indonesian volcano, killing 45 people in a crash that was blamed on pilot error. More recently, production problems and a lack of spare parts have kept many aircraft grounded. This crash will prompt new questions about the Superjet program. Aeroflot says the aircraft was new, less than 2 years old, and had just completed its regular maintenance certification. Chris Brown, CBC News, Moscow.
Officials in India revealed the scope of destruction from Friday's cyclone on the east coast. Hundreds of thousands of people are homeless. 33 have died, and damage to infrastructure is in the millions. 200-kilometer-an-hour winds tore off tin roofs, snapped power lines, and uprooted trees. Officials say millions of people moved to higher ground in the days leading up, avoiding a much worse disaster. The growing clashes between Palestinian militants and Israeli forces got a lot bloodier today. Hundreds of rockets were fired into Israel. It hit back with punishing airstrikes in Gaza. 23 Palestinians and 4 Israelis were killed. As the CBC's Paul Hunter reports, the rising death toll and escalating attacks could lead to an even wider conflict.
Relentlessly, all weekend, rocket attacks into southern Israel and counterstrikes from Israel into Gaza. All of it painfully violent and depressingly familiar. Still, it's the most intense fighting in that region in months. And for the first time since the 2014 Gaza-Israel war, among those killed today were Israeli civilians, including a 58-year-old father of 4. The dead on the Gaza side was a mix of militants and civilians, including yesterday a 14-month-old girl and her pregnant aunt. Also, for the first time in years, there was a separate targeted airstrike by Israel, killing a senior Hamas commander. Massive strikes will continue, said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. Forces at the Gaza border, he added, will be stepped up. This latest fighting follows Palestinian complaints Israel wasn't acting quickly enough to ease its economic blockade on Gaza. On Friday, gunfire from Gaza wounded 2 Israeli soldiers, and the violence escalated from that. But many now also worry about the timing. National and religious commemorations are coming up on both sides, and Israel will soon host the Eurovision Song Contest, bringing with it tourists and worldwide attention. But some underline the key to what happens next may well be how Israel now responds to its civilians being killed. Pressures on the Israeli government to intensify its reply,
which is escalate the airstrikes and, more worrying, threaten surgical ground assaults across the border. Once that happens, you could have pointless fighting on both sides that will go on for weeks.
Indeed, tonight, Israeli tanks were spotted heading toward the Gaza border. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Muslims here at home are beginning the month of Ramadan. For many, the first night of prayers start tonight. The month of Ramadan is the holiest in the Islamic calendar. Muslims stay away from food and drink from dawn till dusk, and worshippers observe a special prayer at night during this month only. They believe the first verses of their holy book, the Quran, were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad in this month more than 1,400 years ago. These women are breaking the mold. We'll take you to their dance program in Midtown Toronto after the break. The city was buzzing with runners this morning. Thousands raced toward the finish line at this year's Toronto Marathon.
Really nice. It's most of it's quite flat. There's quite a few downhill parts. There's one fairly uphill part which I managed to power through, so that was okay.
It's nice, a little warm, but really beautiful. Wind is low. This is one of the best weather days for this race that I've experienced.
It feels incredible. I'm so happy to be here. So happy with the weather. We couldn't have asked for better weather today.
Proceeds from the event go toward the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. Women are getting down with a breakdancing program in Toronto. It's called the Toronto B-Girl Movement, and it teaches young women the fundamentals of breaking and how to thrive in an industry dominated by men.
It's all about representation. The breaking community is heavily male dominated, and for a change, we want to bring in more female bodies into this space.
This is a great way of female teachers showing you in a comfortable space, and you can kind of learn at your own pace.
I learned to be more confident. I don't care about how people think about me. I just do my stuff, and I grow a lot because of this program.
Good on them. They've got quite the moves too.
Some strong women. I'm inspired to polish off my moves and get the dancing shoes out maybe.
Are you? Okay.
More of a waddle these
Your
days.
center of gravity is a little off, I'm guessing.
But how nice, all those runners talking about how great it was to run with the perfect sunny weather. And it is really nice when a weekend ends off nice, because then you hopefully can remember that for the rest of the work week. And boy, you're going to need to have that in your memory banks this week, because it starts off warm, but we kind of go off the rails pretty quick. Upper teens and 20s even away from the lakes for much of the day Monday. The rain, light showers at best, move in late afternoon. It'll be a little bit heavier throughout the evening commute. And the bulk of the rain, about 10 to 15 millimeters, will come in throughout the overnight period, maybe even a few rumbles of thunder into the southwest. Tuesday morning sticks around a little bit for the commute, but then what is ushered in is a gusty, cooler northwest wind. Watch as the temperatures decrease, okay, by about 5 degrees from Monday to Tuesday, even more so by Wednesday. And then that's when we look at this next system. Big, deep trough pulls in a lot of Gulf moisture. We're talking a washout of a day starting Wednesday overnight right into Friday morning. We don't really dry out until the Mother's Day long weekend, which is lovely, but will we be able to compare to May of last year, where we had a whole bunch of days over 20 degrees? We had a few days over 30, if you remember, as well, and our average temperature was downright balmy. Unfortunately, it doesn't look at this point like the next couple weeks will be more of the same vein, but at least we have a dry Mother's Day forecast. Happy early Mother's Day to you, Maribel, by the way.
And same to you, Sophia. Thanks. And that's our show for you tonight. We're going to leave you with some of those incredible moves from Toronto's freshest girl gang, the B-Girl Movement. Thanks for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. Have a great night, everyone.